What is up, Wizards fans? Welcome into another Believe in Wizards podcast. I'm Matt Moderno. He's Dan Favale. Dan, thanks for talking Wizards preseason basketball with us. The most exciting thing you could do with a Sunday night, I'm sure.
Believe it or not, it is the most exciting thing I could do on a Sunday night. So thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here for a launch. I don't know that I've been here for a launch of something. So I look
That's pretty
forward to
cool.
more pre and post game content from Believe in Wizards throughout the season.
Yeah, it's going to be a little interesting if they're like 15 wins on the year, at the end of the year, if anyone will care before or after the games. But hey, we're going to try and see how it goes. We'll just we'll test run this thing a little bit. This year can be kind of like the guinea pig test for, I don't know, 3-4 years ago or from now when they're actually good. I guess we'll try some shit out and see what works.
Also, Cooper Flag watch too. Like that's
It's
should
huge.
draw some eyeballs, I'd assume.
That's a perfect segue because it's one of the things I definitely want to talk about a little bit here with this, direction of both teams. But before we get into it, we're brought to you by Stateside Vodka and their Surfside Hard Iced Teas and Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season. With the NFL going on right now, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this betting on the Commanders. So I don't know, as a Ravens fan, if anybody wants to make a little friendly wager for next week game, we'll see how it goes. But either way, it's a win-win for the area here. But yeah, Bet Online is your number one source. Head to the website today and get your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, Dan. Starting five, I guess maybe let's just kind of go through this a little bit. I'm curious for your perspective. I've not seen these announced yet at the time of us hitting, go live on this, but saw ESPN projected Davion Mitchell, Grady Dick, RJ Barrett, Ochai Agbaji, and Jakob Pertl for Toronto, just given where they're at with some injury stuff. So any sense for that, if you think that's realistic or not?
I would think that's realistic because you might have just named their 5 best available players, depending on how
Okay.
people feel about Kelly Olynyk. So
Yeah.
I don't know where else you like if you want to quibble and say Jamal Shed is better than Davion Mitchell, sure, Ochai Agbaji, but no Scotty Barnes, no Emmanuel Quickly, like they're just no Jacoby Walter either, right? Like the
Yeah,
rookie's not
that's a
even
big
available. So
one. Kobe is out for the foreseeable future here with some kind of shoulder injury. So we'll see what that looks like. Also, my connection is lagging a little bit. Figures is how a launch would go. So apologies in advance to Dan and everybody listening to this, but we'll power through. All we can do. On the Wizards side, this is like a big point of contention, I think, among fans of what they'll actually do when the season starts, of just what the starting lineup really looks like here. Obviously, Jordan Poole is going to start. Kyle Kuzma is going to start. Jonas Valanciunas is going to start. What would you do with the other two starting spots there, Dan?
So we have Valanciunas, Sarr, and Kyle Kuzma. I mean, you know how I feel when the Wizards are at full strength. You know my guy Bilal Coulibaly
Got to be
needs
in
to
there.
be just in there. There's just
Yeah.
I don't know why you wouldn't have him in there. And then I mean, I know Brogdon is dealing with something right now, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, he went back to DC with a hand injury.
yeah, I would start Bub Carrington. I tend to
Oh,
go
I
through
like it.
baptism by fire and just say,
Okay.
hey, and also I was smitten with him during summer league. You know
Yep.
that. But I also think that you have enough. Maybe you're too young there, but I think Bilal is actively good. This isn't like a
I
fascination
agree.
that's just born out of nothing. So you have
Mhm.
Kuzma, you have Valanciunas. Like it feels like there's enough stable NBA player forces there to be like, hey, let's throw Bub in there and see what he can do. And I do ultimately think I know Jordan Poole has a strong close to the year last season. I think
Mhm.
his best role is still going to be like, hey, coming off the bench. If you're looking at a Wizards team that's either good or at full strength, so that's the look I would go with. But this is just more from, and I'm curious how fans and media members who follow this team would be like, I just want more information on the young guys who I think might
Right.
still be here beyond the next couple seasons.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious, it's like whether fans might prefer, like, no, like Jordan Poole's just better. So let's start
Sure.
Jordan Poole.
It's tough too, right? Because last year I would have thought like Denny and Daniel Gafford were two of the more important pieces, on their roster for the future, and those are the two guys they moved out. So I can get pretty excited about Corey Kispert and how he might have like a big jump in him this year offensively, but he could realistically be on the move here in the next month or two if somebody else needs some shooting or they can't get like a long-term deal done. So it's those kind of things I think are going to be really intriguing storylines for this team as they move forward here too.
Yeah, I think I'm most fascinated by I mean, the SAR stuff, like how much is he going to play with Valanciunas? I'm
Yeah.
very intrigued by that to see how they develop him there. But I'm looking at kind of like the floor general makeup of this team, and it's
Mhm.
okay. There's decisions when you're healthy with Brogdon and Carrington and Poole, but also like, well, who's gonna let's fast forward to like the trade deadline after it. Like, who's going to be running a majority of the, is Brogdon still here? Is Jordan Poole still here? And then also, aside from the, the common names that you're going to mention, like, well, how much playmaking does Kuzma or Bilal Coulibaly try and shoulder? And I think that's my, I don't know if I don't want to use the word favorite, but like, if there's a thing that I'm locked in on as just someone who's not necessarily watching every Wizards game, it's like, what is just the structure of the offense and who's initiating most of the stuff, and what does it look like? And I really hope by the end of this season, at least, and I would do this out of the gate, I really think it should be Bub Carrington. So I'm hoping they get to that point. I feel like, from my perspective, I'd be a little bit surprised if they got to that point right out of the gate. I'd be pleasantly surprised, I should say.
You'll like this too. Brian Keefe has mentioned a couple times now that he sees Coulibaly as a big guard, and they're looking for him to play make and create more this year. So I thought you'd like that.
Be still my heart. You know what? I always knew Brian Keefe was the right hire. That's why, especially my
Double
guy,
down on him, baby.
Lifetime contract. Yeah,
I agree. He might be the best Wizards coach in my lifetime, just by default, just for saying that. But low bar, so we'll see if that pans out. Any other names on this Wizards roster that you're intrigued by that we haven't talked about, or any of the non-likely starters here? Like, does Jared Butler or somebody like that interest you in any way, shape, or form?
So I am actually intrigued by Jared Butler. I mean, we talk about playmaking and like someone who might just have some wiggle. Like, throw him. I understand the perspective of, if Brogdon's healthy, you're going to want to probably increase his trade value to see if you could get a late first, or even if it's coming back with bad salary. I really just feel like teams know who he is if he's going to be healthy. And so, like, I want more information on the younger guys. I also still, I'm a big Justin Champagnie guy. And so I would like to see more of him this year. And I think as someone who they have like a lot of like wingy type players, and he could be one of them. And then the other one that you actually turned me more on to when we were talking before we did the Wizards look ahead on Hardwood Knocks, I'm really intrigued by Keyshawn George. And if there's like an extra level of cell creation there for him, and if you trust like the defense to kind of hold up, that's someone who sort of archetypally could be like a superstar role player type guy. And so, like, there are a lot of, I'm not really, Kyle Kuzma's good. I'm not intrigued by him. Malcolm Brogdon, good. I'm not intrigued by him. The Jordan Poole experience is kind of fun in a anarchic way, but I'm just so fascinated by all these unprovens on the team. And honestly, Alex Sarr might not even be like in my top 2 or 3 at this point. So
you're preaching to the choir here, right? Like, there was a video that one of the Wizards beat reporters, and I forget who, so apologies to them, posted of George shooting threes in practice the other day. And he knocked down like 11 in a row or something. And I was like literally just like shaking my phone with excitement over and over again, because if you got another guy like that, like, this team needs a lot of spacing here. And that's like an immediate way for him to get on the court. And especially if you can't come to terms with something with Corey Kispert, somebody's going to need to shoot the ball on this roster. And it can't be like solely Malcolm Brogdon is your only guy with a chance like to get close to, 40% from 3, essentially.
Yeah, that's a good point. It also makes you need that if you want to play Sarr and Valanciunas together. I know Valanciunas has like some stretch, is how I would call it, but it's not like he's not a stretch big. And so if you want to play that way, I would say it increases the importance of the spacing around them. And if we know Kyle Kuzma, who is, I mean, objectively, he's just the best player on this team. I don't know if there's an argument for anybody else.
Right.
But like, he's just not a caps lock shooter. Like, yes, he will take threes, he will make threes, and defenses will respect him for the most part. But so, yeah, that's a really good point, that if you're going to play 2 bigs a lot this season, I would think that you would want to roll out some of your spicier spacing combinations.
Perfectly said. The other guy I'm kind of most intrigued by on the entire roster is Saddiq Bey, who is not likely to play for a very long time, if at all, this year. But I think there's more there, and it'd just be kind of interesting. And he's the kind of guy I want to see them keep taking, chances on. So the fact that, I don't know, if we see him at all, it'll be with like 8 games left in the year is a little deflating right out of the gate. But
that was such a because he got guaranteed money, even though I don't expect him to play this season. And I will say, he is first team all looks like he should play way better defense than he does.
Yeah, exactly. He was good in college too. Like, I remember going to a game where they played Creighton, and in the same game, he guarded a point guard and a center. And you're just like, holy shit, if this guy can even guard 2 through 4 on an NBA court, it's a game changer. And now he guards nobody, essentially.
Right. And look, the Hawks at one point said that they were collecting those dudes between Jalen Johnson, who was really good, but like looks like he should play better defense. DeAndre Hunter, same deal. And then they had Saddiq Bey just floating around out there. So I liked the gamble, though. And if you want spacing, like, even when he's not making them, Bey is still going to get him up. So.
For sure. Al in the chat here asked, what happened to Isaiah Livers? I honestly don't remember any info about him. I just had not thought about him until this exact moment, from the minute he got hurt last year. So I would imagine, I don't know, he's been banished to the Shadow Realm or something. Like, I don't know. I don't know
if it was a health thing, but he also didn't shoot the ball necessarily too well when he was getting minutes with the Pistons, because that's someone who was intriguing from just, oh, like that dude will get them up and he'll move around.
Mhm.
And he was sort of like, no, you don't necessarily, some of the defensive matchups would be weird, but you can envision him like, I think there were lineups where he was playing the 4. And so it's like you could move him around between the 2, 3
Yep.
and the 4. But I know he's just dealt with a bunch of health issues. And look, I'm going to be honest, that is not a name. You mentioned the Shadow Realm. Yeah, probably. I've not thought about Isaiah Livers in quite some time.
Yeah, no one not in the Livers family is probably thinking too much about what he's doing on a basketball court this year, unfortunately. But who knows? Maybe we'll see a resurgence somewhere if he shows up on a court in Latvia or something like that. They keep an eye on him. All right, just let's maybe switch gears a little bit here for Toronto. I have no idea what's going on there. So, and you have not done your preview yet for your podcast, which plug for Hardwood Knocks for anyone who does not already follow the podcast. It is like, I don't know, my go-to listen to get like smart on every other team in the league. So I was holding out for the Raptors installment there. But like, what's the plan if you're Toronto? They won 25 games last year. This roster's like kind of young, and they're just expecting like Scotty Barnes to do like everything, I guess. I don't know. Where are they at?
Raptors look ahead will be dropping this week with the
Okay.
legendary Samson Folk. And thank you for your support as always, Matt. Appreciate it. So Toronto's interesting, and I don't know if you saw what Jakob Pertl said at Media Day when he kind of he basically said, like, we're not trying to win a championship this year. And
Okay.
people were making fun of him, saying you can't say the quiet part out loud. I'm like, no, this is great.
Yeah,
We want
sure you
players to
can.
be like candid. This is what it is. And like they are rebuilding, but
Mm,
I would expect like this is a team that's built to be, I would say, reactive more than proactive, where I think they're going
okay.
to play when they're healthy. Yeah, you mentioned Scotty Barnes doing everything, but like they're going to play, I think, Scotty, Emmanuel Quickly, Jakob Pertl, and RJ Barrett
RJ
out the
Barrett,
gate.
yeah.
Those 4 played well together last year. Obviously, Gary Trent Jr. is not there. You're
Mhm.
probably hoping Grady Dick can slot in there as like kind of fill in for that shooting, or maybe Jacoby Walter when he's healthy. And if they are better than expected, like I don't know that the plan necessarily is to just be as bad as possible, because what's fascinating about them, and you kind of alluded to this, all of these guys have either agreed to their second contract or
Yep.
they're on their second or third contracts already. When you look at RJ, Scotty, Jakob Pertl, Emmanuel Quickly. So it's not a traditional rebuilding thing. And if we want a clue of what the Raptors are doing, I think it's more of going to be a trade deadline thing where, oh,
Mm,
did they just move Emmanuel Quickly or something? Or did they give up a first round pick to get someone in there to help them win? So it seems like their direction is open ended, but I would expect, because their bench is so bad, aside from future Hall of Famer Chris Boucher, of course. I would expect to see them throw a lot of like experimental lineups out there. And
okay.
even looking at this game specifically, like they're really going to test RJ Barrett's playmaking chops, I would assume, when you don't have Scotty or Emmanuel quickly available. And that's something the Knicks did too, was RJ Barrett plus these bench mobs. I would expect to maybe see kind of a lot of that in Toronto. It's not a core lineup, but like when you're trying to figure out what this team is and what they're about, that might be a way that they're trying to explore any depth that they have in place.
Just looking at this roster, there's a lot of centers too. You've got Kelly Olynyk, Chris Boucher, Bruno Fernando, Jakob Pertl, Ulrich Chomche, Brandon Carlson. Like those guys may not play actual minutes for this team, but just it it seems weird. Like this is overreactionary for a team that like didn't have a real center for a long time, and now they've got half a lineup full of centers. It just sort of not really sure what the plan is around that, and just I, I don't know.
I,
Thoughts on that makeup so far?
I honestly think they saw Portland and Indiana kind of collecting big men and were like,
Yeah,
we got to keep up.
we could
No,
beat them. Yeah.
I really do think that they are just so open to kind of anything happening that
Hmm.
they want bigs in place where, so with Kelly Olynyk as an example, they want to open up the
Sure.
floor for their ball handlers, but it's also kind of like they might be taking these flyers because is someone going to want to trade for Jakob Pertl at the,
Mm,
like, we just don't know where this team is going to be. And that's, I'm sure you're asking me for clarity, but I think that they are just, their ambiguity is their clarity, is that they're
makes
not
sense.
expecting to be good and they are going to prioritize development. But I do think they're built, if they're better than expected, to move quick on that. But if
Mhm.
they're kind of in just that, bottom of the middle morass in the Eastern Conference, like this is a team that might tear it down and you're going to want options at those spots. And like when you look at the center position, they don't really have a young center prospect anymore. Like Christian Coloco's not there. And so like they have these guys in place that they could take flyers on. But as you mentioned, I wouldn't expect them to play a ton. But it does sort of speak to, I think the other thing it speaks to that they really do believe that Jakob Pertl is the guy. And that's another thing to watch with this team. His defense has slipped over the past like couple seasons. The rim protection numbers aren't there.
Yep.
And I'm very curious to see. Toronto played a more conservative defensive style last year. I would think, especially a game like this, when you look at the personnel, I'm wondering if they experiment with kind of not Nick Nurse level aggressive defensive schemes, but like, is there more of a balance? Are they trying to like provide more pressure on the perimeter rather than trying to kind of insulate themselves, from the from deep out? So that's something I would look to. But they really do seem to believe that Jakob Poeltl can be the anchor of a league average or better defense.
Especially if you've got to play Davion Mitchell like minutes, like just let him go out there and just be a nuisance to people and just be crazy in point of attack. Like that's been the one thing I think he's done at like an above average level in the NBA is just be a pain in the ass on the perimeter. And that maybe takes a little pressure off Pirtle, and you just have to ask Barnes and Barrett to hold up. Like they have the tools to do it. Every time I watch Toronto, I'm kinda underwhelmed by the Scotty Barnes defense. I don't know if that's just me catching him on bad nights, but this is a dude I expected to be like, like a first team all defense caliber guy. And I don't really think he's anywhere near that. Am I off base there, Dan?
No, no, but like as you mentioned, though, like the ball pressure is real. And that
Mhm.
was sort of not that acquiring him is a harbinger of what the Raptors are trying to do, but I think that shows they are going to try to be more aggressive on defense. And I think you also have to look at it as, even if you believe that you think Jakob Poeltl is a good anchor, Kelenic is not. The guys
Yeah.
behind them are just so unproven that you can't. I mean, Chris Boucher at his peak has actually been a pretty good rim protector,
Mhm.
but I think it's putting a lot of faith in, we're going to be more aggressive at the top so that the guys who are on the back line, like maybe their role is streamlined a little bit more. We're not funneling guys to them. We're not asking them to make as many rotations. We're going to switch more up top, or we're going to rely on guys to provide more ball pressure. So I think it's totally fair what you said. And it's just, I mean, it comes back to this team is filled with just a bunch of dudes that, aside from Scotty Barnes, and I would say Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett, like you just have those four known commodities, and that's it.
You mentioned this is a team that could kind of go either way with it, and Masai Ujiri is not afraid to make big moves. Just given kind of where the cards he's dealt, he'll play whatever he needs to play. But at the end of the day, do you think this is a team that is like realistic competition for the Wizards in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes at the end of the year?
No. And I think two things will separate them from that is that I really believe that if the Wizards for some reason are a lot better than we expected, and I see now that Jordan Poole is starting against the Raptors. So Brian Keefe, but he's starting Bilal though. So he's still my guy.
They're all in on Poole, by the way. They've talked about that a lot. It's like they're doubling down on the Poole as the offensive creator experiment, whether that works or not.
I've got a couple bridges I could sell them to. So if they want to
Exactly.
hit me up for that. I don't even remember what the question was now at this point. What were we just talking about before Jordan
Cooper
Poole?
Flag. Do you think
Oh,
these two teams are battling it out of the bottom at the end of the year?
no, I think the two things that separate it is that when you look at the Wizards, if for some reason that they are better than expected, which is
Mhm.
it could always be a possibility. Will Dawkins, Michael Winter, like they're not going to let them stay that way. And I think this is a team that'll act quickly. Whereas with Toronto, if they even do enter that sweepstakes, it'll kind of be like what we saw from the Jazz. Maybe they won't be as good, but the past two seasons they've had to make moves closer to the trade deadline,
Mhm.
and you're just not going to have the time to make up that sort of ground, especially when there might just be other teams in the East who are worse than Toronto off the like Detroit off rip should probably be like worse than them, even Chicago. So those would be, if I'm the Wizards and I'm looking at lottery odds, those would be teams that I would be more concerned about than Toronto at this point.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Thanks to John Paul for putting in the chat here. Jordan Poole, Bilal Coulibaly, Kyle Kuzma, Alex Sarr, Jonas Valanciunas. I would not put any faith in that being like the opening day starting five for real. I think maybe the Brogdon absence has a lot to do with Sarr being kind of in his place there. Keefe seems like content to just kind of keep Corey Kispert in that like bench scorer role. So maybe with the absence of someone to promote to replace Brogdon, they just decided like, hey, we'll go big. We'll give the young guy a shot here and see if he looks a little more natural in like this complementary role as opposed to like jacking up step back threes, with the hand in his face in summer league.
Yeah. So who do you think they'll start when they're full? Is it this just plus Brogdon instead of Poole?
I think it's this plus Brogdon instead of Sarr. They're committed to like Poole as the starting point guard. Like that's been like every quote from media day. It's just like he will be the guy to run this offense. So for good or for bad. So to me, that probably means they go Poole, Brogdon, Coulibaly, Kuzma, Valanciunas when the year starts.
I guess that's good from a perspective of if you want Sarr to play more center, you
Mhm.
want him to spend fewer minutes with Jonas Valanciunas and then he comes off the bench. That'd be it, both of those, Sarr and Bub Count, they're not both coming off the bench after the trade deadline, right? There's no way.
I wouldn't want that as a Wizards fan, and I don't think most of us would either. But they were really like careful about how quickly they brought Coulibaly around last year, and They didn't even bring Vucevic over until the end of the season. So I don't think they're afraid to kind of like wait and let these guys play when they're ready. Although I think that would be a huge oversight if both of those guys were sort of getting like 17 minutes a game, like in March.
And I guess they were good about still finding Bilal minutes when they were
Mhm.
bringing him along. So that's still just like kind of maybe I'm just overexcited from just like, okay, they just drafted these two guys in the lottery. I want to see them play as much as possible. So, but from my end, that's a little bit of a bummer. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, tonight's the night to do it. Like, if you want to win real games early in the year and show people you're going to be more competitive than they think for some stupid reason, like, go ahead and do it. But it's a preseason game. Like, get weird, play all these guys a bunch of crazy minutes together. Put Poole and Carrington and Koulibaly and those guys out there together and just like let them rock and just get weird.
Give me what could be a potential 2029 Wizards starting lineup. Like, let's play those guys right now.
Yeah, I'm curious how many of them are actually on the roster right now. Like it's whoever gets drafted at the end of the season, I think is definitely in that lineup, but I don't see George profiling as like a long-term starter most likely. Like he's kind of like a good super sub to me, like almost what a team would get from a Sadiq Bey type. Uh so yeah, I think Sarr probably is starting those games, Koulibaly is starting those games, and hopefully Carrington. And I think by 2029, I would imagine Poole's probably, a couple stops removed from here would be my guess.
That it depends on how you view, like, if Koulibaly is gonna be the 2 or the 3 in that scenario, but they have the
Mhm.
potential to be really nasty on the
Huge. Yeah.
wings long term when you look at the
Yeah.
size of Carrington and the vision, coupled with what we know Koulibaly could do, and I say, like, imagine finding a 3 or a 2, and that's not necessarily
Mhm.
the easiest thing to do, but at the same time, it's like a really nice start when you're looking at just to have that size and a primary playmaker, which to me didn't watch a ton of him in college, did all my work, like, kinda leading up to the draft, post-draft.
Mhm.
I could see just Bub Carrington being someone who is the floor general of a good half-court offense long term, and to have that kinda size there as, like, that's your sort of floor general type, is absolutely huge. So, I'd like to see them get a little bit with those 2. I wanna see him like a non-Kuzma, like, combo wing type
Yeah.
in there. I wanna see if they can build something off that.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing for me about Carrington. Like, I kind of see him more as like what Jordan Poole is long term, of like, I can be a scorer who can pass and create a little bit more so than like a point guard, which I don't know that there are that many like real point guards in the NBA at a high level anymore anyway. So it may not matter, but it was just hard to tell at Pittsburgh last year because they had Ishmael Leggett and Jaden Lowe running like a lot of point around him. So I don't know if it's because they didn't trust him to do it, or he's better not doing it, or they just made the best of the personnel they had. But that's what I'd want to see this year. And I don't know, maybe Brogdon being out for a stretch here is an opportunity to get him more, backup point guard minutes and just kind of see what he can do.
Yeah, and I was impressed with how in summer league how quickly he got off the ball. And so even if
Yeah.
you viewed him in sort of the Jordan Poole secondary terms, he
Mhm.
was just so quick to get off the ball or like
Yep.
look up the floor. And maybe you kind of outlined it. And I think we're seeing some teams kind of bet on this where like look at the Celtics. I know they have Drew Holiday and Derek White, but like no one is an A
On a
plus
real, yeah.
passer on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned there's not really a point guard.
Mhm.
Drew Holiday's a point guard, but it's not like he's not driving the offense. I think teams could get to a point where they trying to just bet on a bunch of above average passers for their
Mhm.
position or their size. And they're more concerned about the versatility and the skill in general than trying to find, we need this person to initiate our slower sets and kind of organize things.
I think that's where like there's already debate among Wizards fans about if it's Cooper Flag or Ace Bailey. And to me, that's where like Flag excels of the two of them is like Flag can help you run offense. Like you can run things through him a little bit more. And I saw Duke in one of their scrimmages the other night, played him a little bit at the 3 essentially. And it's like, okay, like what you can do with him and just moving him up and down lineups, you can make him a small ball 5 at times. Like that's the guy you start to like get crazy and experiment with. So him being able to take some of that pressure off some of these other guys and doing like facilitation by committee, he's somebody that helps you unlock that. So I'd be all for that too.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's where just where the league is headed, where it seems like they want size with skill now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there might be something to that.
Any of these young guys for Toronto, just as we wrap this up, that are like interesting to you that you're looking forward to seeing, like whether it's Jamal Shed, Jonathan Magwo, uh, Chomche, or Carlson, any of those, I would have said Jacoby Walter, but him being hurt obviously kind of throws that out the window.
So of the ones you mentioned, I think it's Shed, who I
Mhm.
still don't know too much about, but people like believe like his defense is like, what if Patrick Beverly was actually good at what Patrick Beverly did? And so that excites me. But from what I know about the offense, that has a long way to go. You
Yeah,
didn't
he can't
mention him,
shoot
and
too well.
maybe he's too high end. I think Grady Dick is going to be really good. And he showed like over the second, he had a really bad start to the year where he couldn't even get minutes. But by the end of the season, like he looked like a motion shooter. There was kind of some escape dribble stuff to his game that I didn't know he had. And when you look at him defensively, I think teams can and should still pick on him. But like he can be in the right spots and like he has good size. And so he's a little bit more disruptive than you would think. And I don't want to say he's going to be this two-way wing, but if you have someone who is a motion shooter who can put the ball on the floor a little bit, like a level of Luke Kennard when he had cartilage in his knees, like being able to do that, but like not being a complete sieve on the defensive end. That's just there might be a higher end prospect in Toronto there than I think he's been credited with so far.
Yeah, I like that. Last thing, I'll let you get out of here and let everybody get out of here and go watch the game. Just one key matchup to watch here tonight, I kind of highlighted is Coulibaly against Barnes. We saw last year that Coulibaly wasn't afraid to take on these like tough matchups, and he didn't really win them that much of the time. I don't think against like the best guys, but Barnes is like a guaranteed 25-5 kind of guy. So I think that'd be really interesting. So whether he guards him or even RJ Barrett, I think you're going to get another look at like the leveling up that Coulibaly has done in this offseason. But any other, whether it's that matchup that you want to talk about or any other one that you're kind of intrigued to see tonight?
No, that would be a good one because I'd like to see, did Coulibaly, how much stronger did he get? Because I agree with you that he wasn't winning the defensive matchups that he had, but I thought I was looking at this every time he played, like, he's just sort of holding his own. It doesn't feel like he's getting manhandled when he's like having to guard these guys. And so if he's stronger and just has another year of experience under his belt, it kind of stinks in that vein that Scotty Barnes isn't going to play because like RJ Barrett is RJ Barrett at the end of the day. Sure. And so, but that would be a matchup that'd be exciting. Of the guys who are playing, like, can we just look at sort of the raw bigs? Like, are we going to see Sarr versus Chomsky at some point or something? Like, cool. I just don't, and I don't even know how big Chomsky is at this point, but he's pretty big, but they've listed him as a 3 on their depth chart, and he's not a 3. So
no, he's like a raw 5, like rim runner, lob catcher type.
First of all, that's what preseason should be about. Is let's get the most raw guys on the floor at the same time for each team and just see kind of what happens.
Or the exact opposite, Brandon Carlson, who's like a 29-year-old rookie, I think, at this point. So
he's 29.
No, he's either 25 or 26, but he is older for a little hyperbole on my part, but he's got to be one of the older rookies in the league at this point, I would think. So
you probably should keep an eye on Agbaji because this team valued him in that Kelly Olynyk. Like they gave up a first round pick in that trade, and it wasn't just to have the right to extend Kelly Olynyk. It was because they believed in Agbaji. I don't know what he is. I honestly, like, you can see sometimes he plays good defense. Sometimes he's hitting his threes. Most of the time he's doing one or neither. So that's someone I'm just fascinated by, but I don't know where he fits in. The archetype of him, I think, fits in. But if he's going to get a lot of minutes, which tonight I would assume he would, I'd be interested to see how they try and deploy him against the Wizards defense. They're going to put the ball in his hands, try to get him in motion. So that'll be that's kind of an interesting subplot to watch to me.
Yeah, honestly, and I kind of forgot about him. I watched a lot of that Kansas national championship team, and just because of his year last year, just sort of wrote him off. So that's a great one. I'm looking forward to, I don't know, whoever gets matched up against him for most tonight. Dan, the single most important question of this entire podcast: where can people find more of your stuff?
Just go check out Hardwood Knocks. We have a lot of fun over there. Matt's on there a couple times a year. He's always nice enough to give me a ton of time, so I was super excited to jump on here. Spelled exactly as it sounds. So come check us out over there. We're trying to build up that community, so we appreciate everyone who comes and checks us out.
And there's a super cool Discord, and it is lacking for Wizards fans. So if you are looking for another online Wizards community with nice, friendly people who won't yell at you for your takes about a rebuilding Wizards team, that's definitely the place to go. So if you want more info on that, you can find it on all their stuff, or I'll point you in the right direction if you want to. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. Folks, give us feedback on what you thought about the first pregame show of the year here. We'll see what these work. Maybe it's better to record them in advance and not do them live. We'll see how it works, but we'll just try it all this year. And the goal is really just provide like an alternative level of coverage that isn't just like, hey, the Wizards lost by 45 points tonight, but they won the third quarter. So that's, like we want to just be, hey, what worked, what didn't work, and try to be as objective and analytical as we can. So hopefully you like it, and tell a friend, hit like on the YouTube button for us there, and subscribe. We always appreciate that too. Dan, thanks again for the time. Looking forward to keeping tabs along the way here as we go.
Thanks so much, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, everybody. Presented by betonline.ag. We'll catch you all next time.